Thank you all for joining us. I'm Lucinda Vakura with the Alpha Group. The title of today's webinar is Retaining COVID-19 Donors. Will this be the beginning or ending of a lifelong relationship? Brenda Asari, our President and CEO, will be moderating today's webinar. Before I turn it over to Brenda, I wanted to go through just a few housekeeping items. So first of all, this webinar is being recorded, and we will have a recording of it posted to our website along with the slide deck after today's webinar. So you can find it there. We will also send an email out with a direct link for where to find it. So keep an eye out for an email from us later today. Immediately following the webinar, you will receive a prompt to complete a short survey. So we really appreciate your feedback. Please consider taking the 2 to 3 minute survey at the conclusion of today's webinar. Everyone joining us today is in listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar. If you do have a question at any time throughout the session, please chat your question to the panelists. There's a Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. And if you click that and open the window, you'll be able to chat your question, and we will answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. And finally, we invite you to join us on Twitter. We will be live tweeting throughout the webinar, and we invite you to join the conversation there using the hashtag NPOStrength, which is at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Brenda to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Lucinda, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join the Alpha Group and our partner, Racino's Marketing, for the special client-only forum meetup, where we are focusing on retaining your shiny new COVID-19 donors. This client meetup was designed with you in mind to advance your fundraising efforts. One of the bright spots of the pandemic has been the outpouring of generosity from existing and new donors. As professionals, we know the opportunities and challenges of retaining new donors. Research shows that retention of new donors hovers around 20%. The Alpha Group knows that with the right strategy and plan, organizations have the potential to increase retention to 60% and beyond. As the Alpha Group reached out to you, some of the questions that we heard included, we have all these new donors, now what? When should we mail to them again? How are these donors different from other new donors? We also heard, help, I need a plan. Since the onset of the pandemic, every business has been saying, we're here to help. Well, the Alpha Group really means it. We are intentional around bringing you the very best thinking and strategic counsel and resources to help your organization not only survive, but thrive as we move into our next normal, whatever that may look like. During our webinar today, our partners, Sue and Ron Racino, principals of Racino, will share insight on the most common questions and best practices relative to retaining new donors. They bring 30 years of experience partnering with nonprofits across the country to help them grow their annual fund programs, as well as developing communication strategies to create lifelong donor loyalty. Thank you so much, Sue and Ron, for your willingness to share your experience and insights with our clients today. There will be ample time for questions and answers after the presentation, so please, again, use your Q&A function to post your questions. So before I turn it over to Sue and Ron, it's time for some group participation with our first poll question. First poll question. So, how many new donors has your organization acquired since the COVID-19 outbreak began? Sue and Ron, thank you.
Well, while you're answering that question, we'd like to say thank you very much. We are so excited to be here today. joining with the Alfred Group on such an important webinar. This is such a big thing that's happening right now with the pandemic, and so many of you are receiving so many new donors, and this is the perfect time to be talking about how do we keep those new donors. So we're very excited to be here today.
We'd also like to welcome any of the Racino clients who have joined us today.
Right, I think there are quite a few of them on there, so we're happy to see you here today too. Do we have results on this?
Let's take a look here. So it looks like
73%
have acquired new donors.
Up to about 100. We've got 23% that have gone between 100 and 500. We've actually have 2% between 500 and 25. Wow! And look at that. We have 2% over 2,500 new donors. So this is exciting because we're going to be talking today and discussing all of these things that Brenda was mentioning earlier. Here's all the topics that we're going to talk to you about in this presentation. We're going to be talking about the importance of new donor retention, why we have to do this right now. We're going to give you some ideas to engage your new donors. We're going to talk about how to create loyal and committed donors. We don't want just those transactional donors. We want loyal, committed, lifelong donors. We're going to actually give you a 5-step process to keeping your new donors. And we're actually going to talk about what should be in your donor retention plan. Okay?
So when we talk about new donors, what we're actually talking about are individuals who you are actually in what we call the courtship phase of the relationship. And you'll be hearing me talk about this on 2 occasions, and that is the first bullet point, that the time to act is now. Cannot emphasize enough how important it is after you receive a new donor in general and a new donor from the COVID-19 crisis to act, to engage, to communicate, to cultivate that new donor as much as you can and as impactfully as you can. In fact, the first 2 to 3 months after you receive that first gift is what we call the courtship phase. It's the things that you do to cultivate those donors during that period of time, the things that you do to retain them that are key steps in getting that donor to give you that second gift. And one thing that I want to say now, why is the second gift so important? We know from having done this for so many years that if you get that second gift, that third, fourth, and fifth gift will come. But the trick is, the magical thing is getting that second gift.
Isn't there a statistic there, Ron, that once you get that, so the response rate is usually pretty low for new donors, and we're going to be discussing that. But if you can get that second gift, you can increase those response rates to like 60%.
As Brenda mentioned in the beginning, yes,
exactly.
By as much as 60%.
Right.
And historically, we know that crisis donors are donors who naturally, I think, have a higher likelihood of only giving one time. It's difficult to retain them. But if you show these new donors, and I think this is key, if you show these new donors how you help people, not just now, not just during the crisis, but on a year-long basis, and how their support will help year-long, you have a greater chance, much greater chance of retaining them.
So consider this, okay? And Brenda actually mentioned this earlier. First-time donor retention rates actually hover around 20 to 30%. So that means for every 100 new donors you receive, 70 to 80 of them will never give a second gift. Okay, these are things you have to be aware of when creating your plans. 16% of new donors right now plan to shift their support to new nonprofits who explain how they are responding to COVID-19. So here's what we know, that your average donor actually receives, or excuse me, they're actually donating to probably 4 or 5 different organizations. The average donor, that's how many organizations they donate to. So now what's happening is that you have turned them, you have gotten a new donor, and they're thinking about this now. They're thinking, do I continue to give to the organizations I always give to, or am I going to direct my money to these new organizations? So it's all about what you do with them right now, whether or not you're going to retain them.
And can't emphasize again enough how important the words it's to just right now during that courtship phase of the relationship with that new donor, who they are easy to forget that they gave to you if you don't remind them, if you don't communicate with them in impactful, effective ways.
Right.
So it's really important that you show these new donors that you have what we call show them the love during the courtship phase, again, if you will. These new donors who may only give once, but most new donors leave, remember, because they don't feel the love. They don't see that there's any sign of a potential long-term relationship with you. And they don't tell you that they're going to leave, just like with regular donors. All of a sudden they're gone. You send an appeal and you're expecting maybe another gift, and they're gone without any warning. It's the donors that you do share a relationship with, that you form a relationship with, and who love what you do, what your organization does. Those are the donors who are going to sustain you throughout the years.
So Ron, I think.
So it's time now, let's
Right.
do another polling question. And this question, how long does it take to get out your first correspondence after you receive a new gift? If you want to go ahead and answer that now. Is it 24 hours, 72, 1 week, 1 to 2 weeks, or 3+ weeks?
We'll give you a minute just to answer that. Okay.
Let's see here.
This is great. This is great. Look at that response.
So 30% get a thank you or an acknowledgement out within 24 hours, 48% within 72 hours, 15% within 1 week, 6% 1 to 2 weeks, and 3 or more weeks, 2%. So what we can say about that is, again, we know that what you do immediately after that gift is received has a whole lot to do with whether you get the second gift. And the other thing to think about is that those donors who give you that first gift, some of them are testing you. And oftentimes, those donors who are testing you are the ones who have the greatest capacity and may have the greatest affinity if you prove to them that you're interested in creating a relationship with them.
Right. So that's interesting, because our next slide is the first step in our plan, okay, to retain these donors. And that is to get your acknowledgement and thank you out within 48 to 72 hours. So you all could probably be joining us in on this webinar on this end of the table, because you're all doing such a great job, and it's just so wonderful that you're acknowledging it right away. And that's a pretty elementary step. We think it's necessary to say. The other thing about the acknowledgments that we want to bring up is that make sure that your, we call it an acknowledgement or a receipt letter. Make sure it's not a generic receipt letter. Like Ron always hates when they start with on behalf of blah, blah, blah organization. Make sure that your acknowledgement matches the appeal. So like whatever you talked about in your appeal, that should be how you're acknowledging the gift. Okay. And
it should be done in human terms. In other words, you should talk about the number of people that were sheltered or nursed back to health, or the number of people fed. Depending on what your organization's work is.
Right. So let's go to step 2.
So step 2 in the process is sending an email or a handwritten note to donors that addresses the impact of the first gift. And this is where we get into the whole thing of donor-centered fundraising and donor-centered appeal writing, in the sense that you need to be talking not so much about what the organization does, but what the organization is doing because of the gift that was received from the donor. And you can do things like sharing special videos or photos of beneficiaries. We'll be showing you a special video in a minute. Tell your new donors specifically what was done with their money, not in general terms, but in specifics.
Okay, so like Ron said, we do have a video here to share with you today. Okay, let's see. Okay, here we go. Now this is from the Pope Francis Center in Detroit, Michigan. They are a homeless shelter that of course they were really affected by the pandemic. And this is something that they put together. It's
very simple.
It's a very simple video, but we thought it would be a great example for you. So here, let's listen to what Father Tim has to say.
Good morning from the Pope Francis Center. I'm Father Tim, and I just want to take a moment to thank you for your generosity. You know, just weeks before our biggest fundraiser of the year, the pandemic hit, and so we, like many organizations, had to cancel the gala. And so this was your opportunity for us to continue to meet operating expenses and to meet the growing expenses as we had to move outdoors. Put the tents up, the porta john, the hand wash stations, and the mobile shower units. All this we've been able to do because of your generosity. And we raised $635,000, an incredible amount of generosity from people like you who helped us. So from California to Connecticut and everywhere in between, people gave to this campaign and have allowed us to continue to meet the needs of the population, the most vulnerable population in the city of Detroit. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you. This Saturday, the sign showed up across the street from us. This kind of kindness, this kind of prayers are what keep us going, and your generosity is what keeps the Pope Francis Center continuing to meet the needs of the homeless population. So thank you very much. Good morning from the.
So that's a real example, right, of a thank you, even with the sound effects at the end with the card coming back in the background.
But they didn't spend any money doing that. But they got a communication out to all of their donors, and they reported back to them what was going on with the pandemic, what they were doing, how much money they raised. It was a great idea, and it was received very, very well. So now we get to step 3, and this is the time where I want to make sure that you're sharing at least 3 to 5 different communications with them. And what we tell our clients all the time is it's not about putting more work on your plate. I understand, you know, that everybody's stressed right now with getting everything out, but you probably already have communication lists, okay? We're telling you, just make sure that these new donors are added. The pandemic donors should be added to your regular communication. So emails, newsletters, get them on there. And it always explain why the work your organization does is so important. Okay, because remember, this is when they're sitting back and they're thinking, are we going to continue to give to Pope Francis Center, or are we going to give back to the organizations that we gave to last year?
One of the things we've found time and time again is that when you can explain effectively why you do what you do, rather than just explaining what you do, but the why of it, why you're passionate about the work that you do, you will get those donors to give and give again.
Okay, so here's another example, and this was a piece that one of our clients, they did.
The Ann Carlson Center?
The Ann Carlson Center. They're in North Dakota, They are a facility for developmentally disabled, and they have education facilities, they have medical facilities, they have 8 different facilities. They're a wonderful organization. But they sent this piece out, and it looks just like a little thank you note. But they sent this to all their donors, and I believe that they went back. I think they went back like 3 years with all their donors. So they had sent out an appeal, but before anybody even responded to the appeal, they sent this out.
And if I can just read this quickly for you, it's kind of small there. Our mission is to make the world a more inclusive place where independence is a gift to all. And it's signed, as you can see, by a number of the staff. Thank you for standing with the Ann Carlson in these difficult times. Your past, present, and ongoing support ensures the mission of Ann Carlson endures. Know that we are thinking of you and hoping you are well. We pray that you continue to be strong, safe, and healthy during this pandemic. Your partnership gives us hope and the strength to persevere through these times of uncertainty, knowing we are all in this together.
So that was a beautiful way of just reaching out to their donors, just to let them know that they were thinking of them. So that's all the different communications, and we're continuing it here. This is still step 3. It's all about communicating. Send them a welcome packet and try to engage them. The whole idea is you want to make them feel part of your organization, part of your team. Now, when I say welcome packet, I have an example here for you. I don't mean a big 8.5 by 11 like folder kind of thing like you would do for a capital campaign. Welcome kits, welcome cards, welcome packets in the annual fund with these donors, with the pandemic donors. It can be something simple. Here's something that the Jesuits, we've worked with the Jesuits for years, and what they've done. If you can see on the left-hand side of your screen is the picture. So that was the front of the card. And then on the right-hand side is what was inside the card. And it basically is their mission. And then on the bottom of the card, when you open it up and you see, it says welcome. So you wanna welcome these new donors, and we're so grateful that you've joined our family, is what you want to be saying. You want to give a little paragraph on where that money that they donated, where that is going to, and then you also, in this piece, they've included a what they call the daily examine, which is a small little prayer card that can easily fit in someone's wallet, in their purse, in their pocket. I actually have one on my desk, but they send this out to all of their donors every month. Every month they send this, and with the pandemic, we're doing more and more of these. So, and this is a very simple solution. Like, once you have these developed, this is something that you can do on a monthly basis. And like just send an organization like ours, we get the Excel list from different organizations that we work with, and they just ask us to send them out on a monthly basis. So that should be part of your plan. And let me also state, this says welcome to the community, but it could also say welcome back. So if you have lapsed donors,
that's a good point,
that have joined your organization again because of the pandemic, you want to welcome them back. You want to let them know that they used to be donors and they've joined your organization again. So I hope that gives you some good ideas there.
So step 4 then in this process, again, we talk about that it's time for action. It's time to try to bring your donors, these new donors that you've acquired, in closer to your organization. And one of the ways to do that is maybe by asking them to volunteer, or saying to them that there will be volunteer opportunities soon after this COVID-19 crisis is over with. You can ask them to share social media posts or like your Facebook page. You can tell them that as soon as this COVID is over with, that you're going to be inviting them in for a tour to see firsthand what they contributed to. And you can give your donors opportunities where they can continue to learn and invest their time and their energy in your cause. And I guess if you think of it in terms of a drip communication process where they're receiving something on a consistent basis from you, where they learn more and are able to invest more of their time and energy into what you do and into why you do it. That's what we're getting at here with this donor retention plan.
Okay, now step 5, here it is. What we do in step 5, you ask for that second gift. You have 60 to 90 days to ask for that second gift. What we are experiencing right now is that all of the organizations that got their spring appeals out are now looking at summer appeals. Some of them didn't have summer appeals in their plan, but they are adding them so they can get these new pandemic donors to donate again. When you ask for a small increase, not a large increase. I mean, we're talking probably about, depending on the size of the gifts, but like maybe a 10% to 20%, depending on what they gave. And ask for a specific need. You have this wonderful opportunity right now. The pandemic, people gave to you because they care about what's happening in the world right now. They believe in your organization. Tell them how you have been impacted by this pandemic, that you can still talk about that now. Things have not changed. We all know that, unfortunately. So let them know how it's impacted your organization.
So a couple of things here that I just want to reference, and that is we often get pushback here, and where it's said to us, oh, we would never ask for a second gift that quickly. You have to remember, if you don't ask, you're not going to get. And those other organizations that donors give to are asking right now. So you've got to ask, or you're not going to get a gift. And the other thing is, we normally don't say, we wouldn't normally recommend asking for a specific need, except when there is a crisis going on. That's when you say, a gift from you now would help us do X, Y, or Z for the people we serve. So normally it's about opportunities for donors to join or to give. In this case, it's talking about specific needs because of the crisis.
Right. And remember, one of our clients said this to us, that she considers, and I think this is so important, that your job is to give the donors the opportunity to give to you. Remember, it's not our job to decide whether or not we should ask. It's our job to give them the opportunities and let them, because right now people are looking for ways to do good things in this world. So don't miss the opportunity.
So you need to be continuing on an ongoing basis to grow the relationship that has begun. One of the ways to do that is simply to update donors on current projects. You can do that with, for example, a simple one-page impact report, or by sharing testimonials from beneficiaries. And you want to continue to show gratitude, to show appreciation, to thank donors. I'm often asked, well, how many times do I have to thank a donor? It seems like overkill. It may seem like overkill to you, but it's not to a donor. You cannot thank a donor often enough. Thank them on the phone, thank them in an email, thank them when you see them in person. One of the major reasons we see that donors say that they leave organizations or send their support somewhere else is they didn't feel appreciated, bottom line.
Right. Or they don't have a connection with the organization. They feel they don't understand what's going on. Right.
So here's what we think is a bright idea, and we want you in the form of a challenge. And that is, in order to keep your new donors, you have to engage them. You have to inform them. You have to involve them if you want to continue to have them to give to you. So the challenge is, what are you going to do to engage, inform, and involve them?
Right. Okay. So now here, what we've done is we've come up with this $100 scenario. And that's because I know some of you are out there saying, and our clients say to us all the time, we can't possibly do all of this for all of these donors. Some of you actually got a lot of donors.
Yeah.
And I know that you can't do all of this for all your donors. So our recommendation is that you create scenarios based on giving levels. And yes, you do more for the larger donors. But some of you, it all depends on your staff size, on your volunteers, on what you can do. But our recommendation is create giving level scenarios. So let's just say this is the $100 scenario. And I have clients that actually do this with $50. So it's amazing to me the work they get done. But okay, you send that quick acknowledgement letter out. Okay, that goes out pretty quickly. You guys are all doing a really good job on that already. Okay, a week later, you do a hand-signed thank you note. Now that hand-signed thank you note does not necessarily have to come from you. That could come from, it could come from the president of the organization. It could come from the CEO.
Chairman of the board.
Chairman of the board. It could come from development committee members. I have committee members that do things like this. Use other people to do a hand-signed thank you note. In the note, make a promise. Promise to keep them informed. But whatever you promise to do, you have to make sure you do it. You're building trust with them. So for example, you write the handwritten note that says, Brenda, you made my day. When I got to my desk today and I saw your most generous gift, it made my day. Okay, you're gonna say something like that, and you're gonna say, I promise to stay in touch. I'm gonna add you to our communications list. And if you do that, and then they see the email come in from you, or they receive your newsletter, the e-newsletter or the direct mail newsletter, they're like, oh, look at that. That's what they told me they're gonna do, and that's what they're doing.
When you make a promise and you keep it, you build trust, you build loyalty.
Exactly. And then 2 to 3 weeks after you do that, the handwritten note, you send a welcome kit. Okay. And maybe, and like I said, the welcome kit could be a simple card. That's fine. But maybe in the welcome kit, you send a link to a thank you video. Or in the welcome kit, you send a piece inside that lets them know about something new and exciting that's happening in the organization. When it's not pandemic time, you can do things like events and things like that, like let them know what events are happening. During this time, that would be a little bit different. But then let them know when they're going to hear from you again. Just what you want to do. I like to describe this as when you first start dating. I mean, you think about it. If you went out on a date and you never heard from the guy or girl again, you'd have no relationship, right? So these steps and everything that we're describing to you today is you're building a relationship. And we all know that especially during the pandemic, maybe some of these donations were smaller, but they will build just like any other relationship. You just have to nurture it.
And just to go a little deeper with that last bullet point about letting these new donors know when you'll hear from them again. Let's say it's a thank you letter that you're sending out. Perfect place to put that is in the PS, because that's one of the things they are sure to read. You tell them when they'll hear from you again. You keep that promise, as we talked about earlier, with an impact report, a newsletter, a welcome packet, whatever the case may be. And again, the trust and the loyalty is built. Right.
Okay, so maybe it's another time for some participation. Yep. Maybe we could do our next polling question.
Let's see, that next polling question is, do you currently have a plan in place to keep new donors? And your options are, Well, I didn't know we should have a plan. Or, yes, it's in my head. Yes, it's on paper, but no one knows about it. We're working on implementation. Or, our donor retention plan is running smoothly. So if you want to go ahead and answer that one.
We're asking this question because we meet with a lot of our clients that actually talk about this, and they don't have it in place. So let's see. Yes, it's in my head. Oh, 50% are working on implementation. That's great. Okay.
Can I just say this about, yes, it's in my head? One of the things, when we are told that, one of the things Sue always says, well, what happens if you walk outside tomorrow and you get hit by a bus? That plan is going to end the vine, right? Right. No one else knows what the plan is. You need to have that plan in writing somewhere where it can be continued. Right.
And so here, what we want to talk about next is actually what should be in your plan.
So this is kind of a summary of the donor retention plan that we're suggesting for you. The first one being acknowledge new donors as soon as possible. Remember, again, some of your most qualified new donors are going to be testing you. Make it as personal as possible. Respond to the donor through the same channel they used to send the gift. If they sent it through email, send them an email thank you, as well as always a letter, we always believe. Tell stories of people that have been helped. Cannot emphasize enough how important it is that you tell a story of a person who your organization helped because of the gift that was received by the donor. And your content should connect the crisis to what your mission addresses, not just now, but on a year-round basis. And remember to prioritize first-time donors based on things like gift size or other criteria that you establish. And again, make sure that the plan is in writing.
Right. And here we have some just kind of ideas of what should be in your plan. Your appeals should be in your plan. That's a communication piece with your donors. So your appeals should be in the plan. We have a lot of clients that actually, even when they don't want to ask a donor for another gift because maybe for some reason the donor's given a number of times during the year, they don't want to ask again, they'll still send appeals, but in that first paragraph, they'll say,
thank you.
Thank you for, yes, thank you for your continued support. And we wanted to share this correspondence with you that we're sending to everybody else because it has such a great story. So your appeals can be going to everybody all the time. It's very important to ask. I don't want to mix that up. It's very important to ask in your appeals, but there are times when maybe even with board members and stuff, you still share the appeals. Surprises are birthday cards and anniversary cards. And granted, you won't know that information about your pandemic donors right now, but those are nice surprises that you can be trying to gather that type of information. Your thank you note should be part of your plan. Your monthly e-newsletters, your phone-a-thons, thank-a-thons. Like I think I mentioned that before about having, I think I was talking about the handwritten notes. You can have volunteers, but volunteers love to do thank-a-thons. Right now is a great time to reach out to volunteers and say, could you help me make these phone calls to just say thank you to these donors? And let them know that they're appreciated. You don't even have to give the volunteers the gift amounts. Just call them and ask them to join you and do a thank-a-thon. In your plan, there should be volunteer opportunities. And of course, videos are such a great, just a great source of communication.
So these are certainly not all of the tactics that you can use. They are just some of them.
Right.
They are limited only by your imagination. Come up with as many as you can. to draw these new donors in. And finally, what we want to say is that 2020 is likely to be, and has already started to be, a very difficult year, not only for nonprofit organizations, but for everyone. There's been financial strain because of everything that's happening, and it's also an election year. You need to do as much as you can to make your new donors feel special. And remember, how you make those new donors feel after they have made that first gift is how your organization is going to be remembered. So we want to thank you for being here on the webinar today, and we certainly welcome any questions.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much. I am back with a number of questions. This certainly was a very, very enlightening presentation, and the insights that you shared, I know, are very, very valuable. So I have a couple of questions that I want to just kind of kick us off with. As you talked about the election and what we've seen in the past, but given your experience, what makes this time, COVID-19, unique compared to others? We think about what happened in 2008. We think about September 11th. What do you see as being distinctive about this particular time in history as it relates to direct marketing?
You want to take that one, or shall I?
No, you go right ahead.
So in 2008, the Great Recession, which is very different than the way nonprofits have reacted to this particular crisis. Many fundraising teams, marketing and fundraising, their budgets were just basically frozen. They stopped communicating. They stopped sending out appeals, to the point where for over a year, there was nothing happening. There was no money coming into organizations unless it was personal visits and major gift type solicitations. This time, I think most nonprofits have learned the lesson that you have to continue to fundraise, you have to continue to market, to continue to communicate with all of your different constituents, and we are seeing really very, very gratifying results from those organizations that are doing that.
Right. And that's what I would add to this. What we're seeing right now is terrific results from the spring appeals that everybody sent out. So, right. So Brenda, that's why when we started talking about this, like what could we do as a team to present this webinar? The questions were, now we have received so many new donors, what do we do with them? So where during these other crises, people stopped. And the budgets were cut. They're not cutting the budgets right now. They're moving forward. So if you're not doing that, you'd miss out on opportunity.
And as I recall, they cut donor acquisition, trying to find new donors back in 08.
Right.
And then we got flooded by calls around 2010, maybe.
Right.
We need new donors. What are we going to do?
We have no prospects.
Yes.
Right. Right.
Yeah, because you know what, when I spent the bulk of my career with the American Red Cross, so certainly I understand donor acquisition, especially during time of disaster. The other, fact that we would oftentimes find as attention is the loss of donors. When we think about attrition and trying to replace those donors and the cost. One of the things that we've been seeing as a trend for the past number of years is the increase on monthly giving. And I wonder, have you seen any stats is that a factor when you think about retention of these new donors? Are they more inclined to do monthly giving when we do recapture them, or do you have any information on monthly giving as a strategy to try to keep them on the donor file?
Well, actually, for our particular clients, for the most part, we haven't seen a great uptick in monthly giving. We talk to our clients about that strategy. But to be honest with you, there's not a lot of them that have instituted that.
Right. You know, but I heard you mention recapturing lapsed donors. When do you consider a lapsed donor as a new donor? And I love the welcome back packet. I think that is so smart and strategic. And you're paying attention.
Right, exactly. And that's what the donor wants to know. So, okay, so it all depends on the organization, but we welcome them back. It's usually like if they haven't donated in the past 5 years, or it depends on when, you know, because when we analyze things, we look at lapsed, and then we look at long lapsed. There's been great success in appealing to lapsed and long lapsed donors. Long lapsed would be after 10 years. But we've had great success appealing to them and saying, we know that you haven't donated since, and giving them the date, and we miss you. So
and reminding them of what.
Exactly.
So as organizations are planning for their fall appeals and year-end appeals, would you advise that they include lapsed donors? And now that we have COVID, in terms of increased demand for services, would you advise that they include those donors as a part of their year-end appeal?
Yes, we have many claims doing that for the summer. They're reaching out.
Summer.
Yeah. Right. Because they've been in touch with their donors, and then they have these new donors, so they want to contact them again, but they want to reach out. They think this is a really good reason to reach out to them.
And what we're seeing, Brenda, is that the days of most organizations only doing a fall, an end of year, and a spring appeal are in the past. Many of our organizations that we work with are transitioning to between at least 4 to 6 years.
Right.
Wow. So they're having appeals go out almost every other month, but are they segmenting those appeals to first-time donor only, or are they incorporating them as a part of the larger donor pool strategy?
It's not just the first-time donor only. I mean, they're definitely including them, and they have that as a separate segment. Because whenever we do appeals, we do many different segments, and then we analyze each segment, so we see what kind of response and average gift we're getting from them. But you would definitely segment them out. Yes.
Okay. This is a great question. Given that our development team is working remotely without admin help, our thank you process is taking longer. Is it better to send an email thank you that's less personal but gets out quickly, or is it better to take longer to get those thank you letters mailed so they can be personalized more?
Right. So my advice would be to do both. If you can get the email out and you have good email addresses, I would do that immediately. And in the email, I would explain that, because we're all working. And I think people are so understanding right now. They really do get it. But I would definitely use the quickest resource that I had. So if that was email, I would get that out. And then I would do personal notes that follow.
You know, the other thing that I would recommend, I know a number of our clients on the call today, a number of them have been using their board members, as you mentioned, to make thank you phone calls. So that is something else to keep in mind. Your board members are eager to be of support right now. They're at home and they want to be helpful. So if you're struggling getting those thank yous out, call on your board members to make those thank you calls.
Right.
Especially if it's a board member who's reluctant to quote unquote help with the fundraising function. This is a way they can still help with fundraising, but not having it to go out on an ask or to ask friends for gifts.
Right.
No, we have a couple of questions related to channels. So this one question is, what about donors that come through a text to give, call, or appeal? Because I heard you say earlier that you want to respond back to them via the channels that you acquired them through, right? So
Yeah.
If they're an online donor, your communication should be online. If they're direct mail, it should be direct mail.
So you should be sending a thank you, text them a thank you, certainly, but we firmly have seen throughout the years that you should also continue to send them a hard copy of a thank you.
Right.
Because it's statistics still show that most people make most of their gifts when prompted by direct mail. And people who give through texting have probably also received, prior to anything they send, received direct mail prompts, and then they make that text
They
to
do
give.
the campaign.
Oh,
Campaign
I see.
yes.
But also, too, there's research that shows that those who you want to start communicating with them through mail, because you then have the opportunity to increase those gifts. So you don't want it to be just a transactional, like the text to give. You don't want it to be just transactional. You want to create the relationship, and you can do that better through like direct mail.
What have you seen relative to challenge and match opportunities? Have you had any experience with that being another incentive for first-time donors to support again?
Absolutely. It's a great way to use a match. Absolutely. We were just talking to one of our donors or one of our clients about that's an idea to use for the appeal to all these new donors, that if you can get them to give a second gift, somebody will match it. It's a great idea.
And it's a strategy that I think, quite frankly, is not used often enough. We don't see it often enough.
That's right. What are some examples of missteps not to do that were well-intentioned?
Well,
I love that question.
I think that's a good question. And one of the things that I see is organizations get their thank you out quickly, and they get it out within the allotted time, but there's very little thought put behind it as far as the impact of the gift. And it's not a personalized thank you in terms of your gift of $75 allowed us to do XYZ, whatever that is. So that's one of the things we do is we help our clients with their communication pieces in terms of making them as personalized as possible.
Donor-centered.
Donor-centered fundraising principles that we try to apply all the time. And I think that's the one glaring thing that I see well-intentioned organizations doing a lot, is not putting enough thought into what they're sending out.
And I guess I would answer that, where I've seen so many smaller shops try to do it all for everyone. And so then what I hear is, when we're talking to them and, we're able to get the acknowledgement letters out. Did you send out the personal note? Well, I didn't have time. I couldn't do it because they're a smaller staff. So that's a real, not to sit down and figure out, okay, this is create a plan. This is what we're going to do for the people who gave $100. This is what we're going to do for the people who give $1,000. So otherwise, they're just spinning their wheels, and they don't end up accomplishing anything because they're trying to do too much. So that's another problem that we've seen.
So segmentation sounds like that's really important too. Could you speak a little more about the welcome packet? The sample that you shared had 3 pieces, the card and then 2 smaller cards. The question here says, should action steps such as an invitation to volunteer, attend a tour, should that be included in the packet, or is there another way to include those engagement opportunities?
Okay, so the piece we showed you, the actual card that was in there, that was printed front and back, so that was only one piece.
Okay.
So what we usually recommend is that, that was the Jesuits, so they had a prayer card available. I always am very budget conscious, and I try to recommend things that they may already have. A lot of our clients do volunteer opportunities, and they'll develop a piece that maybe is used for 3 months, and then they change that one piece every 3 months. So yes, it should be some sort of an engagement piece, but that's what you normally include in those.
Yeah. What are you seeing relative to more digital engagement opportunities with us being in this environment? And this question is from someone with an arts organization. And we've seen some awesome tours that are being offered online.
Right.
What are you seeing from some of your arts clients in terms of creative ways they have been using to engage and retain donors?
This has been a real challenge, I would say.
Right. I know, like, we work with the Goodman Theater, and I think everybody in Chicagoland knows what they're doing. They're doing a lot of online things. We have a lot of clients who are doing digital things. Just a lot of, they're doing virtual tours, and they're doing interviews with people through Zoom that, with artists and things like that. They're putting on shows. Which the Goodman Theater has been doing some really cool stuff like that. But we have a lot of organizations doing like a fireside chat kind of things where schools are doing that, like gathering their alumni, and they're doing fireside chats with the president, just kind of keeping everybody updated on what's going on. They're doing fun things like trivia nights. So,
wow.
And that's fun, just to get people out of, the element that we're in every day right now.
And we Sue and I are, we have worked for a number of years with the Children's Museum here in Oak Lawn, the community we live. And, for many museums, they're, to speak to your question, Brenda, they've been really challenged during this time. But they have found a way to talk to their constituents about how culturally children are losing out on the educational opportunities that children's museums afford them.
Right.
Because you can't be going to the museum right now and actually having those hands-on experiences that you do when you go to that type of a museum. So that's one of the things that we've seen that is working very well right now.
Here's a question. It looks like it's a new nonprofit. What would you say is the most effective way to reach new donors for a new nonprofit at this COVID-19 time? Mail by buying a list, public announcement newspaper, social media. So again, the question is, what are some other strategies for acquiring new donors? So this person is asking if they have to be proactive. What are we seeing in terms of you going to the donor versus waiting for the donor coming to you?
Well, I don't think you can basically wait for the donor to come to you, obviously. So then it becomes, what can that particular organization afford to do? We believe firmly in creating a direct mail plan and executing that plan, but looking at what kind of what we want to do, kind of budget an organization has, and guide them or counsel them based upon their budget and what they can accomplish within that.
Right, and there are ways to acquire lists where you can find people that are donating to similar organizations. So that's something that can be done and would probably be very helpful. And you can, like Ron said, so what happens when you figure out your budget, you can then figure out how, and the thing is with acquiring a list, you want to make sure that you have a budget to communicate with them for at least a year to 2 years. Don't just buy a list and mail to them or communicate with them one time. The other thing is all the other things that you mentioned, I thought were really good ideas. And I think that has to be part of the entire communication plan.
Your comment, and I know we are at our time of closing out, but your comment about donor acquisition the acquisition rate when you're buying a list, what is that? Is it somewhere between 0.5% and 1.5?
You're right on, Brenda. Ding, ding, ding. That's exactly what it is, 0.5 to 1.5. Before the recession, it was much higher. But not much higher. It was like 2 to 3% before the recession. So, but it's been 0.5 to 1.5. So it'll be interesting to see what happens now after the pandemic, because we're finding so many new donors now because of what's happening. So that could very well increase. Just tell what a wonderful world we live in, that when people can, they do help and they do support.
That's a fantastic way to end our time together. And I want to thank you, Sue and Ron Racino, again for being with us. Lucinda, we want to turn it over to you to close us out.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. That was such a great conversation.
Thank
and I
you.
can tell
Thank
from,
you.
You're welcome, all of the questions that were coming in, I think people are really excited about this type of information, so thank you. Thank you to everyone who joined. We hope that you found this really helpful and picked up some tidbits and tips and tools to use in your organization. A reminder to keep an eye out for an email from us. We will send the direct link to where you can find the recording of today's webinar, as well as the full slide deck that you saw today. So that'll be coming out soon. Also, if we didn't have a chance to answer your question, we want to keep the conversation going. So feel free to email us at the emails here on the screen. You can also email info@alford.com, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. We would love to hear your questions and your comments. So please do contact us. Once we conclude here in just a minute, you will be prompted to answer a very short survey. We appreciate your feedback, so please take just a couple of minutes to answer our 4-question survey when you're prompted. So again, thank you, Brenda, Ron, and Sue. And we will now conclude today's session. Thank you for joining. Yes?
Lucinda, before we end, I just want to make a plug for our Giving USA session, which is coming up on June 17th. So if you have not registered, please register. It will be a national webinar where we're looking back at 2019, but looking forward to the new era of philanthropy as we move forward into the future. So please, we look forward to you joining us then, as well as on future client-only meetups. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
you.
We will now disconnect. Take care.